Welcome to the Case Studies for Surface Transportation Security project, sponsored by Tougaloo College National Transportation Security Center of Excellence. The following program provides an overview of the lessons learned and key decisions made during the 2002 DC sniper attacks and the 2005 Hurricane Katrina disaster. The goal is to assess the impact on the transportation sector of the actual decisions made by crisis managers during these events, suggest alternate decisions that may have improved overall outcomes, and offer a brief look at the commonalities between the incident command decisions made during each of these events. Each case study is presented in its entirety. You may, however, pause the video between case studies for discussion.
The crisis known as the Beltway Sniper case paralyzed the Washington metropolitan region for 22 days in October of 2002. Much has been written about this case, from daily press and television reports to blog entries, books, television shows, and even a movie. The attention to the details of this case is almost exclusively centered on how the police responded to and apprehended the snipers. Other articles and books have been written on the media coverage of this case and the sensationalism that it caused, and still others have examined the concept of fear and how the media and public leaders, such as police chiefs, can raise or lower public fear based on their context of reporting. But little has been written about the impact of the Beltway Sniper case on public and private transportation. This case study will examine the timeline of events that took place during this 22-day crisis. Here you will recall the horrific speed with which the shootings began and then expanded from one county and one state to the District of Columbia, and then another Maryland county, and then 3 counties in the state of Virginia. There are 5 major lessons learned from this case study. The first lesson is that partnerships work. All of the public officials involved in this case had pre-existing relationships with each other within their respective professions and domains. It was through these established networks and partnerships that communication lines remained open and conference calls were immediately established. The second lesson learned is that the Incident Command System, or what we call ICS, worked very well. Here you will see the advantage to using the Incident Command System and the benefits that it produced. For example, professional relationships that came together during the September 11, 2001 events and the anthrax attacks that plagued the Washington, D.C. area during the fall of 2001 definitely helped shape a confluence of public and private partnerships that heretofore did not exist within established networks. The third lesson learned is that a good relationship between management and labor unions can pay big dividends during a crisis. The relationship between Chief Polly Hansen and the Metro Transit unions is one noteworthy example for transit systems. This relationship kept line of communication open and transit workers informed of events and updates as they occurred. The fourth lesson learned is that the Joint Information Command concept from the ICS worked well. Montgomery County took the lead with a coordinated message developed by Unified Command leadership and the press information officers. This gave other transit systems in the National Capital Region cover as they maintained a low profile. The final lesson learned is that memories linger. For days, months, and years after this crisis, the aftermath could be felt publicly as well as privately, especially with the families and the co-workers of the victims. The Beltway Sniper case provides a unique opportunity to study the stages of a crisis and their potential impact on decision-making. A crisis is defined as a low probability, high consequence event. While many leaders can only see a crisis as a threat, a crisis also presents an opportunity for leaders to introduce lasting change and obtain funding that otherwise would not have come about. There are 5 stages to a crisis. The first is the sleeper stage. Long before a crisis occurs, a series of persistent early warning signals, or red flags, are given off. Next is the Big Bang stage, where the crisis is publicly reported, often with great intensity. Next is the lingering cloud stage, where the crisis continues to be the lead story of the day, along with new details that are announced or developed by investigative reporters. The cleanup and resolution stage follows, where the intensity of the crisis begins to dissipate and the press begins to report the resolutions that are taking place. The final stage is learning, where reviews are conducted and lessons are developed and lessons are learned. In addition to recognizing that a crisis presents an opportunity as well as danger, a decision-making framework can assist a leader in making decisions that carry risk, but they're also worthy of making. The decision-making framework used by many leaders in the public policy analysis is called PEAL-Q. The leader's analysis would consist of determining the impact of the decision on the following factors: political, ethical, economical, and legal. The leader would then do a quantitative analysis by assigning values. It could be something as simple as pluses and minuses that are assigned to each of the factors that are then added up, and then a decision is made if the risk or decision investment is worth taking.
The case study investigation indicates that the lack of a crisis communications plan for a mass shooter incident impacted the response and investigation into the DC sniper events. First and foremost among the decisions that could have been made differently was the decision to ignore early witness accounts that pointed to a blue Chevy Caprice and publicly announce a search for a white box van based on unreliable reports on day 12 of the crisis. Although witness accounts involving the white van were legitimate, they should not have been weighed so heavily given the circumstances surrounding the reports and the existence of other information pertaining to a potential suspect vehicle. Analysts should have noted that most cars and trucks in the area would have been fleeing the sound of gunshots. White vans are an extremely common type of vehicle on local highways and roads, and the lack of any other non-public intelligence pointing to a white van. The operations-based decision-making methodology employed during the case study investigation of the sniper events suggests that efforts to identify and apprehend the perpetrators of the shootings may have been confused by the lack of a crisis communications plan that supported the communication of the right information to the media, enforcement agencies, and the general public. Had police not announced the white van as the prime suspect vehicle, crisis call centers would not have been inundated with erroneous reports, all of which had to be investigated, and those resources could have been deployed in more generalized area checkpoints capable of screening more vehicles. The second major decision that may have had a negative impact on the ability of law enforcement to both manage the crisis and apprehend the suspects occurred on day 16, when confidential communications from the suspects was allegedly leaked to the media. What very well may have been a deliberate leak, in the end, did little to inform the public and further antagonized the shooters, leading them to target a young child. The snipers are also known to have contacted police agency tip lines in an attempt to communicate directly with police officials. The call center did not assign the proper value to these calls by the snipers and did not properly account for the potential of an unknown suspect making contact for the purpose of negotiating. The process improvement factors and lessons learned must include a crisis communications plan that accounts for a suspect of a violent attack to communicate with police officials.